Here's a mind-bending fact. Cleopatra lived closer in time to the iPhone than to the construction of the Great Pyramid. Think about that. The pyramids were already ancient history, over 2,500 years old, when Cleopatra was ruling Egypt. That's how long Egyptian civilization lasted, 3,000 years. 3,000. For context, the United States is 248 years old. The Roman Empire lasted about 1,000 years. But ancient Egypt? They were building monuments, writing in hieroglyphs, worshiping the same gods, and maintaining the same basic culture for 3 millennia. So here's the question. How do you create something that lasts that long? What's the secret to building a civilization so stable, so resilient, that it survives for literally thousands of years? I'm Jack, this is Blueprints of Power, and today we're unlocking the secrets of the longest lasting empire in human history. Let's go. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Blueprints of Power. I'm Jack.
I'm Lily.
And I'm Charlie.
And today we're covering ancient Egypt. And I have to say, the more I researched this, the more my mind was blown.
Why? I mean, pyramids are cool, but what else is there?
Oh, Charlie, so much. Ancient Egypt lasted from around 3,100 BC to 30 BC. That's over 3,000 years of continuous civilization.
Wait, continuous? Like the same culture for 3,000 years?
The same language, the same religion, the same basic political system. Obviously, things evolved, but the core identity stayed consistent. No other civilization in history has matched that.
And they accomplished incredible things. The pyramids, obviously, but also massive temples, intricate medical knowledge, sophisticated mathematics, beautiful art, and a writing system that lasted millennia.
How do you even maintain a civilization that long?
That's exactly what we're going to figure out, because ancient Egypt is the ultimate lesson in sustainability and resilience.
And here's what's cool. Egypt was powerful, but they weren't always conquering. They spent most of their history focused inward, building, creating, perfecting their culture.
They had this concept called ma'at, cosmic order, balance, harmony. Everything was about maintaining ma'at. That stability is what let them last so long.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So we're covering 3,000 years today?
We're going to try. We'll hit the highlights, how Egypt started, what made them so successful, and how they eventually fell.
And we should mention we're focusing on the pharaonic period, from the first pharaohs to Cleopatra. After that, Egypt becomes part of other empires.
All right, let's do this. Lily, take us to the beginning. How does Egypt start?
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's around 5000 BC, and the Nile River Valley in northeastern Africa is the perfect place for civilization to develop.
Why is the Nile so special?
Because every year, like clockwork, the Nile floods. It deposits rich, black soil along its banks, making the land incredibly fertile. You can grow multiple crops per year. Meanwhile, just a few miles away from the river, it's desert.
So it's this green strip in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly. And that geography is crucial. The desert provides natural barriers against invasion. The river provides transportation, food, and water. It's like nature designed the perfect place to build a civilization.
So people settle there?
Yes. By 4000 BC, you've got farming villages all along the Nile. Over time, these villages form into 2 kingdoms, Upper Egypt in the south and Lower Egypt in the north.
Wait, Upper Egypt is in the south?
I know it's confusing. It's called Upper because the Nile flows from south to north, so south is upriver.
Okay, that makes sense.
And around 3100 BC, a king named Narmer, also called Menes, unifies Upper and Lower Egypt into one kingdom. This is the beginning of pharaonic Egypt. Narmer becomes the first pharaoh.
What's a pharaoh exactly?
Pharaoh means great house, and it's the title for Egypt's king. But here's the key thing. The pharaoh isn't just a political leader. He's considered a living god, the son of Ra, the sun god, and the incarnation of Horus, the sky god.
So the king is literally a god?
To the Egyptians, yes. The pharaoh is the bridge between humans and the divine. He maintains Mayat, cosmic order, through his rule. If the pharaoh is strong and righteous, the Nile floods, crops grow, and Egypt prospers. If he's weak, chaos comes.
So there's huge pressure on the pharaoh.
Enormous pressure. And after unification, Egypt enters what historians call the Old Kingdom, from about 2686 to 2181 BC. This is when they build the pyramids.
Finally, the pyramids.
Yes. So the pyramids are tombs for the pharaohs. The Egyptians believed that when you die, your soul, your ka, lives on. But it needs your body preserved. That's why they mummify people.
To preserve the body for the afterlife.
Exactly. And the pharaoh needs the most elaborate tomb because he's a god. So they build these massive pyramids. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built for Pharaoh Khufu around 2560 BC, is made of 2.3 million stone blocks. Each block weighs about 2.5 tons on average.
How do you even move those without machines?
That's the question everyone asks. They used ramps, levers, copper tools, and thousands of workers, probably 20,000 to 30,000 people working in shifts. And these weren't slaves, by the way. Recent archaeology shows they were paid workers who took pride in building the pharaoh's tomb.
Wait, not slaves?
Nope, that's a myth. The workers were fed, housed, and given medical care. Building the pyramid was seen as a religious duty and a source of national pride.
That's actually really cool.
It is, and the pyramids show Egypt's organizational power. You need architects, engineers, mathematicians, a huge labor force, food supplies, tool production. It's a massive logistical achievement.
So the pyramids prove Egypt's got sophisticated systems.
Exactly. And during the Old Kingdom, Egypt is stable, wealthy, and focused on monumental building. But around 2181 BC, the Old Kingdom collapses. We're not entirely sure why. Maybe weak pharaohs, maybe drought, maybe both. Egypt enters a chaotic period called the First Intermediate Period.
So things fall apart.
For about 150 years, yes. Local governors fight for power. There's no central authority. It's rough. But then, around 2055 BC, a pharaoh from Thebes named Mentuhotep II reunifies Egypt, and they enter the Middle Kingdom.
So they bounce back?
They do. The Middle Kingdom lasts from about 2055 to 1650 BC, and it's a golden age. Literature flourishes, they build massive irrigation projects, trade expands. The pharaohs focus on being shepherds of the people, more accessible and benevolent.
So they're learning from the Old Kingdom's collapse.
Exactly. But around 1650 BC, foreign invaders called the Hyksos, who have horses and chariots, which Egypt doesn't have yet, conquer northern Egypt. This is the Second Intermediate Period, and it's another chaotic time.
So Egypt gets conquered?
Partially, yes. The Hyksos rule the north, while Egyptian pharaohs still control the south. But around 1550 BC, a pharaoh named Ahmosai kicks out the Hyksos and reunifies Egypt again. And this begins the New Kingdom, Egypt's imperial age.
Imperial age? So now they're conquering?
Now they're conquering, and this is when Egypt becomes not just a stable kingdom, but a military superpower.
All right, quick break. If you're loving this journey through 3,000 years of Egyptian history, and honestly, how could you not? This is fascinating. Hit that follow button right now. Subscribe to Blueprints of Power on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening. We're covering all the legendary empires, and we've got incredible episodes coming up. The Spanish Empire, the Persian Empire, the Inca Empire. We're going everywhere. Share this with your friends, your family, your teachers. If you know someone who loves history or is curious about how civilizations work, send them this show. Post it on social media. Help us grow this community. And please, leave us a review. It seriously helps more people discover the show, and we love reading what you think. Every review matters. All right, back to ancient Egypt, because we're about to get into their golden age and some of the most famous pharaohs in history. Let's go.
Okay, so Egypt enters the New Kingdom around 1550 BC. What makes this period special?
The New Kingdom is Egypt at its most powerful and wealthy. This is the age of the famous pharaohs: Hatshepsut, Thutmose III, Akhenaten, Tutankhamun, Rameses II. This is when Egypt builds the Valley of the Kings, expands into an empire, and creates some of the most stunning art and architecture in history.
That's a lot of names.
We'll focus on the highlights, but first, let me break down Egypt's recipe for power, the ingredients that let them last 3,000 years.
I'm ready for this recipe.
Okay, ingredient number 1, geography and the Nile. We talked about this, but it can't be overstated. The Nile is everything. It provides water, transportation, fertile soil, and predictability. Every year, the flood comes, and every year, Egypt prospers.
So they're not dependent on rain or unpredictable weather.
Exactly. And the desert protects them from invasion. Egypt doesn't face the constant attacks that other civilizations deal with. They can focus on internal development.
So geography gives them stability.
Huge stability. Ingredient number 2, religion and ideology. Egyptian religion is incredibly stable. The same gods, Ra, Osiris, Isis, Horus, Anubis, are worshipped for thousands of years. The belief in the afterlife motivates people to build, create, and preserve.
Because they think they're going to need it after they die.
Right. And the pharaoh being a living god gives political stability. Everyone believes the pharaoh is divinely ordained, so rebellion is not just political, it's blasphemy.
So religion reinforces political power.
Completely. Ingredient number 3, writing and administration. Around 3,200 BC, Egyptians develop hieroglyphic writing. One of the oldest writing systems in the world. They write on papyrus, which is made from reeds.
That's where the word paper comes from.
Exactly. And writing lets them keep records, tax records, legal documents, religious texts, literature. They have a sophisticated bureaucracy with scribes who run the government.
So they're organized.
Very organized. They conduct censuses, collect taxes, manage irrigation projects, and maintain grain reserves for bad years. It's impressive administration.
They're thinking long term.
Always. Ingredient number 4, monumental architecture. We talked about the pyramids, but throughout Egyptian history, they're building massive temples, obelisks, statues, and tombs. These structures serve multiple purposes.
Like what?
They glorify the gods and pharaohs, they provide employment for workers, they create national pride and identity, and they demonstrate Egypt's power to foreigners.
So it's like propaganda, but in stone.
Kind of, and it works. When foreign ambassadors visit Thebes or Memphis and see these enormous temples, they're intimidated.
Makes sense.
Ingredient number 5, military power, especially in the New Kingdom. After the Hyksos invasion, Egypt adopts the chariot and creates a professional army. They expand south into Nubia for gold and north into the Levant for trade routes.
So they're becoming an empire.
Yes, at its peak under Pharaoh Thutmose III, who ruled around 1479 to 1425 BC, Egypt controls territory from modern-day Syria to Sudan. Thutmose III is sometimes called the Napoleon of ancient Egypt because he wins so many battles.
That's a huge empire.
It is. And conquered territories pay tribute: gold, silver, exotic goods, prisoners of war. This wealth funds more building projects and reinforces Egyptian power.
So the empire's funding itself.
Exactly. Ingredient number 6, trade and diplomacy. Egypt trades with everyone: Nubia, Mesopotamia, the Mediterranean, Punt, probably modern Somalia or Ethiopia. They export grain, papyrus, linen, and gold. They import cedar wood, ivory, incense, and exotic animals.
So they're economically connected to the world.
Yes. And they use diplomacy too. There's this collection of letters called the Amarna letters, correspondence between Egyptian pharaohs and other kings. They're negotiating marriages, alliances, and trade deals.
So they're not just conquering, they're negotiating.
Right. Egypt understands that sometimes diplomacy is smarter than war. And ingredient 7, innovation and knowledge. Ancient Egyptians made incredible advances. They developed one of the first 365-day calendars. They created sophisticated mathematics. They could calculate the area of a circle and the volume of a pyramid.
So they're doing geometry.
Advanced geometry. And their medicine was impressive. They performed surgeries, set broken bones, and had remedies for various ailments. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, a medical text from around 1600 BC, describes 48 surgical cases and treatments.
So they had doctors?
Specialized doctors, some focused on eyes, some on teeth, some on internal medicine. They understood anatomy from mummification.
That's actually really advanced.
It is, and they made art that still moves us today. The bust of Nefertiti, the tomb paintings, the golden mask of Tutankhamun. These weren't just decoration. They were meant to ensure the deceased's journey to the afterlife.
Everything has a purpose.
Everything. And that brings us to some of the famous pharaohs. Hatshepsut, one of the few female pharaohs, ruled around 1479 to 1458 BC and focused on building and trade. She sent expeditions to Punt and built one of the most beautiful temples at Deir el-Bahari.
A female pharaoh? That's progressive.
It was rare but not impossible. Then there's Akhenaten, who tried to change Egyptian religion. He wanted to worship only one god, Aten, the sun disk. This was radical and unpopular.
What happened?
After he died, his son, Tutankhamun, King Tut, reversed the changes and restored the old gods. Tut died young at about 18, but his tomb, discovered in 1922, was mostly intact and filled with treasures.
That's the golden mask guy.
Yes. And then there's Ramesses II, Ramesses the Great, who ruled for 66 years from 1279 to 1213 BC. He built more monuments than any other pharaoh, including the temples at Abu Simbel. He had over 100 children and is often considered the greatest pharaoh.
66 years? That's an insane reign.
It's incredibly long, and under him, Egypt reaches its peak of power and prestige. But after Ramesses II dies, Egypt starts to decline.
Uh-oh.
What starts going wrong?
Before we get into the decline of ancient Egypt, I want to thank you for sticking with us through 3,000 years of history. I know that's a lot, but I hope you're seeing why Egypt is so special, why it lasted longer than any other civilization. If you're enjoying Blueprints of Power, please share it with someone. Send it to a friend who loves history, a teacher who might use it in class, a family member who's always curious about the world. Word of mouth is how we grow. Next week, we're covering the Persian Empire, Cyrus the Great, Darius, and an empire that connected 3 continents and influenced everything from government to architecture to human rights. You're going to love it. And if you haven't already, please leave us a rating or review. It helps so much, and we genuinely appreciate every single one. All right, time to talk about how even ancient Egypt, after 3,000 years, eventually fell. Let's get into it.
Okay, so Egypt's been going strong for thousands of years. What causes the decline?
The decline is gradual and complicated. After Ramesses II dies in 1213 BC, Egypt faces several problems. First, weak pharaohs. None of Ramesses' successors match his strength or longevity. Power struggles emerge.
So leadership gets weak.
Yes, and second, external threats. Around 1200 BC, there's this major upheaval in the eastern Mediterranean called the Bronze Age collapse. Nobody knows exactly what caused it. Maybe climate change, maybe migrations, maybe internal rebellions, but major civilizations fall apart.
Like who?
The Hittite Empire collapses, Mycenaean Greece collapses, cities are destroyed across the Mediterranean, and Egypt is invaded by groups called the Sea Peoples. We don't know exactly who they were.
Mysterious invaders?
Very mysterious. Egypt fights them off under Pharaoh Ramesses III, but it's costly. The empire is weakened militarily and economically.
So Egypt survives but is damaged.
Right. And third, economic problems. The wars and invasions are expensive. Trade routes are disrupted. Egypt starts running out of gold from Nubia. The government can't pay workers.
So they're going broke.
essentially. And when the government can't pay workers, things fall apart. There are strikes. Famously, the workers building tombs in the Valley of the Kings go on strike because they're not being paid.
That might be one of the first recorded strikes in history.
It probably is. And fourth, loss of territory. Egypt gradually loses control of its empire. The territories in the Levant break away. Nubia becomes independent. By around 1077 BC, the New Kingdom ends, and Egypt enters the Third Intermediate Period, another time of division and weak rulers.
So they're fragmenting again.
Yes, Egypt is divided between multiple rulers and foreign powers start to dominate. Around 747 BC, Nubian kings from the south actually conquer Egypt and establish their own dynasty, the 25th dynasty.
Wait, the people they used to rule are now ruling them.
Exactly, it's a reversal. But these Nubian pharaohs still respect Egyptian culture and traditions. They're Egyptianized Nubians. But then, around 671 BC, the Assyrian Empire from Mesopotamia invades and conquers Egypt.
So Egypt's being conquered by foreign powers.
Repeatedly, the Assyrians rule for a bit, then Egyptian rulers regain independence for a while. But in 525 BC, the Persian Empire conquers Egypt under Cyrus the Great's son, Cambyses II.
So Persia takes over.
Yes, Egypt becomes a province of the Persian Empire. They have some autonomy, but they're not independent. Egyptian pharaohs try to rebel a few times, and they succeed briefly, but the Persians keep coming back.
So Egypt's still around, but not really in charge anymore.
Right. And then in 332 BC, Alexander the Great conquers the Persian Empire, including Egypt. The Egyptians actually welcome him as a liberator from Persian rule.
So Alexander takes over?
Yes, but Alexander respects Egyptian culture. He's crowned pharaoh and founds the city of Alexandria. But when Alexander dies in 323 BC, his empire is divided among his generals. A general named Ptolemy gets Egypt and founds the Ptolemaic dynasty.
So now Greeks are ruling Egypt?
Greek-descended pharaohs, yes. They adopt Egyptian customs and are considered pharaohs, but they're ethnically Greek. The Ptolemaic dynasty rules for about 300 years, and the most famous ruler is the last one, Cleopatra VII.
Cleopatra!
Yes. Cleopatra rules from 51 to 30 BC. She's incredibly smart. She speaks multiple languages, including Egyptian, which most of the Ptolemies didn't bother to learn. She tries to maintain Egyptian independence by forming alliances with powerful Romans, first Julius Caesar, then Mark Antony.
So she's using diplomacy.
Strategic diplomacy. She has a son with Caesar and children with Antony, but Rome is becoming the dominant power. Octavian, who becomes Emperor Augustus, sees Cleopatra and Antony as threats.
What happens?
War. In 31 BC, at the Battle of Actium, Octavian's fleet defeats Antony and Cleopatra's forces. They flee to Egypt, but it's over. In 30 BC, rather than be captured and paraded through Rome, Cleopatra commits suicide, famously by snakebite, though historians debate that.
That's so dramatic.
It is. And with her death, Egypt becomes a province of the Roman Empire. Pharaonic Egypt, 3,000 years of independent civilization, is over.
That's the end.
The end of independent Egypt? Yes. But Egyptian culture doesn't die. The Romans preserve temples and keep some traditions. Egyptian religion influences other cultures. The cult of Isis spreads throughout the Roman Empire. Egyptian art, architecture, and knowledge continue to inspire the world.
So the civilization ends, but the influence doesn't.
Never does. Egyptian hieroglyphs weren't deciphered until the 1800s with the Rosetta Stone, but people never stopped being fascinated by ancient Egypt pyramids, mummies, pharaohs. They're still part of global culture.
All right, we've covered 3,000 years of ancient Egypt. Time for lessons. What can we learn from the longest-lasting civilization in history? Charlie, you're up.
Okay, this one's big for me. Geography matters enormously. Egypt had the perfect setup. The Nile for resources, deserts for protection. They weren't spending all their energy fighting off invasions, so they could focus on building and creating the lesson. Your environment shapes your possibilities. If you're constantly fighting external threats, you can't develop internally. Find or create environments that let you focus on what matters.
Location and context determine outcomes.
Exactly.
That's great. Mine's about the power of continuity and tradition. Egypt maintained the same core culture, religion, and identity for 3,000 years. That stability let knowledge accumulate, let projects span generations, and let people feel connected to something larger than themselves. The lesson? There's tremendous value in continuity. Constant revolution and disruption aren't always better. Sometimes maintaining and refining what works is the smarter strategy.
Stability enables compound growth.
Perfectly said.
Love it. Mine's about purpose beyond yourself. Everything the Egyptians built, the pyramids, the temples, the art, was for eternity. They were building for the gods, for the afterlife, for generations they'd never see, and that long-term thinking is what made them great. The lesson? If you want to build something that lasts, think beyond your own lifetime. Create for a purpose larger than yourself, and your work will outlive you.
Build for eternity, not just for today.
Exactly, because the Egyptians did, and we're still talking about them 3,000 years later.
That's beautiful.
This episode was incredible. I had no idea Egypt was this deep.
3,000 years is a lot to cover.
It really is, but I hope you all see why ancient Egypt is so special, why it's the ultimate example of how to build something that lasts.
I'm honestly in awe.
Same. All right, next week we're covering the Persian Empire, Cyrus the Great, Darius, and an empire that stretched from India to Greece. They pioneered religious tolerance, built the world's first highway system, and created one of the first declarations of human rights. It's going to be amazing.
The Persians are so underrated. This is going to be a great episode.
I'm already excited.
Me too. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for hanging with us on Blueprints of Power.
I'm Lily.
I'm Charlie.
And I'm Jack, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.